I'm Damien Fowler, and welcome to this edition of The Big Impression. Today we're talking about Spotify and how it's quietly becoming way more than just your favorite playlist app. Yeah, it's not just about streaming music or podcasts anymore. Spotify's ad business has leveled up in a big way. We're talking audio, video, display, and AI-powered creative, all of it. My guest is Brian Berner, Global Head of Ad Sales at Spotify. He's here to break down how the platform is turning cultural moments into performance engines and why brands are leaning into Spotify's programmatic tools to do it faster and smarter. From auto-generated ads to cross-format buys to first-party audience targeting, it's a whole new world inside Spotify right now. So let's get into it. Brian, let's start with a moment that shows off, Spotify's latest offering, which, is the launch of SAX, Spotify's ad exchange. It feels like a really big shift for Spotify's ad business. Why was it the right moment, to make this leap into real-time programmatic?
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, what I would say is the moment itself was, the announcement was in April, right? But it's also been a couple years in the making and development. So to answer your core question, what I would say is as we continue to partner with brands, we're always trying to build what's best for them, right? What does the customer want? And what I would say, especially in a post-COVID economy, you continue to see accelerated focus on brands wanting agility and flexibility when they're activating campaigns, right? So not only do they want to avoid being locked into something for a full year where possible, but they also want to think through how they're aligning their own data and targeting and custom audiences. They want to have flexibility with creative optimizations and A/B testing creative. And then equally measurement. They want to be able to bring in, in-house or third-party measurement, verification to just confirm and get insights on the work they're doing. So when you start from that lens, the moment or SAX in particular, it was really just, because of customer feedback, we, wanted to just make it easier for clients to, ultimately create, buy, and measure on Spotify, and building out the Spotify ad exchange, initially partnering with the Trade Desk and DV360, and most recently Magnite has unlocked about now 39 plus DSPs that we're partnering with globally. That's really the moment or the why that, as brands are partnering with us, we want to be able to just make it easier for them to, create, buy, and measure on Spotify.
SAX is different because it sort of opens up all inventory and all signals in one place. What are you getting? What kind of feedback are you getting from buyers at this time about that availability?
Yeah, I'd say, look, definite feedback or initial feedback is, with the massive increased advertiser count, I think we've already seen over 5,000 advertisers year to date lean into SAC. So I think just the sheer adoption alone is, confirmation that this is the right thing and the market's looking for it. But I'd also say the feedback is, if you think about what they might be doing with like Trade Desk and some of their UID, audience builds, or in other instances, just OpenPath for ease of buying. I think the feedback has just been like how quickly they can, activate and scale on our network. The other thing that I'd also plug in there though is, given that Spotify is a logged in, authenticated user, the real power of SAX is us being able to bring our first party data and matching it with theirs. So, even something as simple as leveraging our age and gender, data mirrored with your, whatever data you're bringing to the table. And then to your point, you hit the nail on the head. All signals, all formats, all inventory just really allows advertisers to maximize, reach and performance to the Spotify users.
I want to say that you've just closed your most profitable year in company history, right? With ad revenue up 114% since 2020. If that's
2020, yep.
And how much of that growth is tied to the programmatic expansion that you're talking about right now versus, advertisers getting in on the action and creative access? I mean, what's the balance there?
Well, look, I mean, if you think about it, we only just announced and opened up these tools in April of this year, right? So our core, where our growth has been coming from, our core products that have been around for, the past 5+ years, that's still where, the majority of that revenue is going to exist in that number that you discuss. But back to my point, where I look at, the majority of growth moving forward with the new advertisers coming to the platform and the different ways we're seeing them activate, I think you'll definitely, this year and moving forward, see the growth coming from automation.
Brian, are there any great use cases where brands have, activated across the platform that are seeing really good results?
Yeah. Well, the way I would think about answering that question is probably like some of the work we've done with brands like a Visa, Kona, even a Budweiser. And what they've done is not just leveraging, automation, but also our aux part of the company. So aux is an announcement we made, I think, 2 years ago, specifically around how we can partner with brands for music consulting, talent and artist alignment, how to activate within music. You give an example such as Kona, for that matter. What they'll do is they'll come to us, and obviously all these different brands have a target audience they're trying to reach, right? So first, just brilliant at the basics is making sure that we're leveraging, scalable media to engage with those consumers. So that's where they're going to be, using like a Saks to just activate their media and have all the flexibility I've been talking about. But with that said, even as the world is digital, consumers, still love experiences, and Kona understands that. They have this incredible program they're doing with different music activations, and one of them is, coming soon. There's the Lollapalooza Festival in Chicago, and we're going to be doing, an offset session during that where we bring in, people, but what we do in that instance and some of the great work is we look at the brand attributes, what does it stand for? And what's interesting because of our streaming intelligence is if you look at like, what are consumers listening to, it's probably always going to be, who knows, like a Taylor Swift, Travis Scott, Zach Bryan. But what's fascinating about Spotify is we can really start layering in like the different, cities, zips or areas, age and gender. And then you can really break down even to sub-genres that align with brand attributes.
So it goes beyond like Gen Z hip hop fans in LA. You
definitely have to go deeper than that.
Yeah.
And that's how you make these just amazing connections. And I think back to your point, like great examples or like what's so powerful and unique about Spotify is having all of that intelligence allows us to really bring the true fans, of the band, but it gives the brand a moment to like be contextually aligned with Spotify, with that band, with that moment. And that's like how you make magic. 1 + 1 = 3.
What's interesting I'm hearing is this contextual alignment for the data, but you're finding cultural moments at events, but then I'm being able to spin those audiences out across to
amplify
the
them,
ecosystem, to amplify them.
Yep. So it was the question like, how are we doing that?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, so why do people events are such like intangible, incredible experiences because you can get your product in the hands of consumers in real time. But to your point, the challenge with events is that they're not scalable. So what we're going to do at that event is, one, if you can, create this amazing, memorable experience for these fans, they're going to share it with their friends, right? Like even if I was going to plug a Spotify program, like one of the coolest programs I've seen Spotify do was called Fans First. And it was under the premise of like, true fans are never really like sitting front row at a concert because, the corporations, whoever come in and buy those tickets. So we started doing pop-up events and we would literally go to cities all around the world and we'd find the top like maybe 75 or 100 listeners of the band or, singer or whoever we were partnering with, send a personalized email for a +1 invite to this experience. But why I'm plugging that back to your example is because then if you think about how amazing that is, the social amplification that those consumers will then help with the brand is one touch point. That's why virality is still and social a big topic of brand pillar discussions. But then two, like it goes back to audiences. So we're trying to also create custom audio assets or videos that will help amplify that experience in that event. And that's where you need scalable media, because if I'm doing an event in New York or Chicago, great, but there's still a whole plethora of other, cities and states that I need to amplify that message to.
Do you think media buyers at the moment fully understand the nuances that are available to them in the platform? Is there still kind of like a gap between what they know and what they can buy?
So that's a great question. I'm going to answer that differently. So I'd say two things. Like, one, no matter how the platforms evolves, and we might roll out like a division like aux or Spotify Ad Exchange, our unique value proposition has never changed, where it's all about attention. So we have a platform, I say this as objectively and modestly as possible. We have a platform where consumers are on over 2 hours per day. And this is a platform where it's a one-to-one experience with that person. Maybe their earbuds in, or they're plugged in, listening. They're not doom scrolling. They're engaged in content that makes them happy or motivated, inspired. I've never gotten off of Spotify and felt worse about myself, right? So from that perspective, back to your core question of do buyers understand the value? I think the value they need to understand is, brands look for moments to capture user attention, and that's happening on Spotify or even other audio platforms. I would speak on behalf of audio. The challenge where I'd want to be a contrarian, and the things I challenge brands on is, we, at any given moment, I think a consumer's entire media day, I'm sure you can split this data in 100 different ways, and we'll have to cite the source, but let's say, over 1/3 of consumers' days are spent engaging with audio, right? Yet audio as an entire vertical is 1% of, budget. So, of course I would, tell you that, the pendulum doesn't have to immediately swing the other way, but there is a massive disconnect between, how marketers are thinking about audio versus where, they're investing.
Yeah. It's interesting that, and I want to get to this, but, Spotify is not, you've gone beyond audio now, right? In many ways. But you mentioned something about the kind of, the value of this to media buyers. Can we talk a little bit about the performance? Are there results that you're seeing since launching these tools that you're seeing good results from advertisers? You're getting that feedback. What kind of results are you seeing?
Yeah, that runs the gamut, right? That's going to, I can answer that 1,000 different ways by country, vertical, et cetera. But what I would say is, it's, whether it's some of the marketers, we're definitely, getting results. Some marketers are simply tracking foot traffic, purchase intent, brand awareness, all the usual suspects. We're definitely, seeing positive results there. And the other thing I would say is the adoption of the Spotify Pixel and some of our first party, solutions for closed loop attribution. You're going to see some, furthered investment and announcements over the course of this year around, our first party solution. So generally speaking, yes, the proof is in the pudding, and back to my earlier, comment, we're seeing increased adoption from sheer advertiser accounts. So all signs are pointing to, this was the right thing to do, and continue to do more of it.
Just as a sort of digression, I was recently at an audio event, and Spotify was there, and other big audio networks. I won't necessarily mention them.
Yeah.
Big audio networks there. What was interesting is the solidarity that everyone had to say, invest in audio.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really striking, and I like to see that. It's great to see that, people are seeing the value across the entire kind of industry.
Yeah, I'd love to, maybe after I'll ask you what event that was, but I love that there's solidarity there. But look, I guarantee you, even at Cannes here, you can walk into any crowd and ask them if they're using a streaming audio platform, and I guarantee you're going to get 100% of the hands raised. And even if you talk about podcasts nowadays, maybe 5 years ago, one person in that crowd or a couple were listening to podcasts. Now I'm guaranteeing you it's 75% to 100. So the point is, I think you're seeing that solidarity because, again, from both, personal consumption from, marketers and brands to everyone, it's very clear that audio is a dominant media platform. And I think there's a lot of underinvestment and therefore still a lot of untapped opportunity and innovation that you're going to see happen in audio.
And speaking of innovation, you have some innovative products inside to help AI creative generate, brands coming in. Are they using that?
Yeah. So what you're talking about is our generative AI audio ads. We've been beta testing them in the US and Canada, and then literally this past week we just launched them in the UK. So in under 4 months, we've seen over 1,500 advertisers test them, and they've created over 7,000 different audio spots.
Wow.
So the premise here, to explain what the tool is like you could go into this tool and you could just simply put in, keywords or, different descriptions about your brand or brand attributes, right? So you put some descriptions, keywords in, etc. Then you can select, the gender of your voice. We're working through accent still, background music, and then even tone, like, excited or calm or low, and then literally first-time users on average can create an audio spot in under 17 minutes. And then really when people get going, you can do it in under 9 minutes. But most importantly, why this tool is getting so much adoption, one, it's saving time versus like this massive, creative process. And again, this is also creatives in there doing it. Let's be clear that creatives are core to building this tool. It's not us doing it. But then two, so they're saving time, therefore probably saving some costs and expenses. But now they're able to leverage, the power of our data or their data with personalization. And think about even, the power of localization where you can have a consistent message, but change it, based on, maybe not zip code, but maybe zip code or city or state. So that's where you're seeing a lot of great fun, testing on, what does a great audio creative look like? And then how do you optimize towards your best creative?
Sure. More to come on that pretty soon, I guess. I don't know if it's too early to say, but are you seeing any performance differential between, say, the human produced spots and the AI generated spots?
I just think the only thing is like just, speed and control, right? There's like I told you, like no matter what, you need, people involved in that process. You're always going to need creative input and creative strategy, put into that process. So I just think it's creating a lot of operational efficiencies for our partners.
Okay, let's sort of zoom back a little bit and look at the big picture here. One of the things we mentioned at the beginning was that, we talked about audio, but you're not just an audio partner anymore. You're making a serious play to, look at the full funnel, right? Everything from video to display and performance. Why is that important?
So to answer that question, it's important to, first talk about our core product. The thing about Spotify is we are always, tapping into our users for, feedback. So even if you think about podcasts, people would make the assumption, oh, we got into podcasts because we're an audio platform. That's not true. We actually saw some very interesting user behavior out of Germany where they were uploading their podcasts using our music files. And it was a horrible, experience because the formats weren't there. So, did some further testing insights, saw that this was something that consumers were looking for. So therefore we, stood up and created a whole new podcast format, file, innovation, etc. So now we're seeing the same exact thing happening in video, that the user signals we're seeing, primarily coming from the younger generation, like most trends, it starts with the younger generation, then, hits mainstream adoption. But we're seeing that our younger consumers are seeking more visual or video content on Spotify. It started in podcasts, interestingly enough, too. So now as a company, we're really working as best as possible with our creators to incentivize them to upload their, video podcasts alongside their audio podcasts. We have music videos that are hitting all countries over the course of the year. And really then the goal is to create a user experience that, based on the different moment, if I want to watch Spotify, I can watch. And then guess what? If I just want to then pivot to an audio, I'll click audio. So there are moments when I'm commuting on the train into Manhattan and I'm watching my video podcast. And then I jump off and I'm about to walk and jump on the subway. I click a button and it switches to audio. So back to your point. So let me start there, that it all starts with the consumer experience. So now how we're working with brands is a keen focus on multi-format, not just audio, to your point. So to that point, I think, people see Spotify as an audio platform, but that's just, evolving now. And so now I think brands really need to think through what is your audio, video and even display, look like. And then what we're working on is, again, giving those signals to the brand and making sure we're serving the right message to the right user in the right moment, in the right environment. And is that environment, video or audio or display?
Excuse me, I've got a stat here that says you've had video podcasts have had 500,000 episodes uploaded this year.
Yeah.
But, with video podcasts growing 500,000 episodes uploaded this year, why is that important as brands look at activating on Spotify?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, again, it's important because it just goes back to what we talked about, brand storytelling, showing up in the right moment, right message, etc. So as brands are looking to figure out how to best optimize creative and brand performance in Spotify, they have to start thinking about, again, what are those moments or creative assets? So if consumers are going to be spending more time watching Spotify, brands really need to be ready to, have, just like I said, the Spotify experience, the brand experiences in that moment, you can watch my brand, or in other moments, you're just going to listen to my brand.
Yeah. All right. We're going to close out. I've got a few quick fire questions here. What are you most obsessed with when it comes to cracking what happens next in Spotify's ad business? Maybe that's not a quick fire question. It sounds like a future prediction, but is there anything that's really obsessing you right now in the marketplace?
Yes, I've already kind of commented on it, but I'm definitely becoming obsessed with, time spent and engagement on audio platforms versus share of investment. And again, that's not even from just like a pure investment standpoint. There is a lot of untapped opportunity that is still out there for us to innovate with brands together. So you're going to hear that message from me a lot this year about the discrepancy between where consumers are spending their time versus where, marketers are investing.
I'm hearing that. What's still missing from programmatic that you wish the industry could understand or wish the industry could solve?
I don't think there's necessarily anything missing per se, right? I think the next evolution of programmatic and a keen focus for us is just going to be continued evolution of measurement. I think I commented on this earlier, but even in my 20 plus years of advertising, I have never had so many consistent discussions around measurement. And it's not just like the Fortune 350. It's everyone from SMBs to mid-marketers, measurement's key. So back to your question, I think in programmatic, continued evolution of measurement, maybe even omni-channel is becoming a real big discussion on looking at the whole media mix, as well as, partners.
I guess finally, I want to ask you, is there a podcast that you're listening to that you really like on Spotify?
I would say, I'm an avid, I think maybe like most people in advertising, and me, I'm an avid Prof G Markets listener, equally a Pivot listener.
Oh, Pivot, yes.
So those two would be favorites. But I'd also, we just launched Good Hang with Amy Poehler, and it's awesome. She's doing a phenomenal job. Her format is really groundbreaking from what I've seen with other podcasts. So that's another fun one, I would say.
So another way of asking that question, I guess, is on your commute, is it music or podcasts?
Oh, I'd say, can I answer that more than commute? I would tell you my workout's music.
Okay.
No, I'll tell you it like this. What's interesting is my cardio is music. My weightlifting is podcast. My commute it over indexes on podcasts, but it depends on what kind of mood I am and if I need a little mood boost. And then I'd say during the office hours, it over indexes on music, and then at night, podcast.
Wow. Yeah, mix and match.
Yeah. I'm a little all over, I guess.
And that's it for this edition of The Big Impression. This show is produced by Molten Heart. Our theme is by Loving Caliber, and our associate producer is Sydney Cairns. And remember,
it's very clear that audio is a dominant media platform, and I think there's a lot of underinvestment and therefore still a lot of untapped opportunity and innovation that you're gonna see happen in audio.
I'm Damien, and we'll see you next time.